Well, Angus Taylor is already taking up the fight to the Albanese government. Yet already the new Liberal leader is under pressure from Conservative Liberals to follow through in his talk about cracking down on the kind of people we let into the country. Pressure on him today to say that he really does mean it, and particularly when it comes to immigrants from many Muslim countries. Because there's been an extraordinary leak today of a secret Liberal plan drawn up under former leader Sussan Ley to restrict immigration from 13 countries with regions controlled by Islamist terror groups. And in a minute, I will show you exactly why the number of Muslim immigrants we take in is a big issue, why it's in fact a critical one. I'll tell you something that I don't think I've heard any politician raise. But let us start with the good news for Liberal supporters. Let's start where Taylor and his new deputy, Jane Hume from the Liberal left, are comfortable fighting the government on its appalling economic record. Now, I have to say, the Taylor's offer to join the Prime Minister to work out the big savings cut this country needs, well, that was just a stunt and not a particularly clever one. I mean, what government is going to ask the opposition for help to govern the country? And what opposition would want to share the blame for doing so? But at least Taylor's offer did flush out Treasurer Jim Chalmers, who's looking increasingly like a desperate man who's been found out. I mean, he's had all that swagger, yet all that failure. I mean, now, today, how dare Taylor tell that great Chalmers what to do?
Angus Taylor is the architect of the Liberal Party's policy for higher taxes on workers, bigger deficits and more debt. After the way he failed as Shadow Treasurer, he should be let absolutely nowhere near a budget.
I think with Chalmers' record of failure, he shouldn't be let anywhere near the budget, but there he is. Jane Hume this morning gave Chalmers the almighty whack he deserved. Now,
I love the fact that Jim Chalmers has spent so much time looking at numbers that don't exist, that are entirely irrelevant, when he could be looking at his own. How about Jim Chalmers looks at 3.8% increase in inflation? How about he looks at a 3.6% core inflation rise, or a cash rate that's now at 3.85%, which means that the average Australian's mortgage is $24,000 more than it was just 4 years ago.
Biff, boff, baff. Okay, so the government has a fight in its hands with these two on economics. But Angus Taylor knows that he also has to fight Pauline Hanson's One Nation on Australian values and especially immigration. So Taylor at his first press conference as leader back on Friday posed in front of no fewer than 6 Australian flags with not one Aboriginal one, which is a dramatic contrast with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who regularly poses with just one Australian flag alongside 2 race flags, which are symbols really of our increasing tribalism. But already with this, I'm asking, will Taylor back up that tease with the flags with some real action, like by saying, well, look, naturally then follow through as Prime Minister and order that only the Australian flag be flown over Commonwealth buildings? Because slogans are easy, actions are hard. And that is the test that some of his colleagues have set for Taylor today, with a brutal leak. Now, the issue is immigration, especially from extremist Muslim hotspots. Since Taylor's big win over Sussan Ley on Friday, he said again and again he won't just cut immigration, but stop certain kinds of immigrants coming here. This is his slogan.
Clearly, the numbers have been too high and the standards have been too low.
You've heard that a lot, and you'll hear it more. But what would Taylor actually do? Now, we hear reports that he may cut net immigration to 170,000 people a year, when the Albanese government brought in more than 300,000 immigrants net in the last full year of figures. So that's already a good start. But who? Who will he let in? Or, more to the point, who would Taylor keep out? Who are these people he'd keep out who don't share our values, as he says? And Taylor again offered a tease when he was interviewed here on Sky News yesterday by Andrew Clennell.
Since the 1970s, when Gough Whitlam ended the White Australia policy, we've had a non-discriminatory immigration policy. Are you looking to end that? Would you like to see less immigrants from Muslim countries?
Now, our focus is on bringing people to this country who believe in our values, who come here because they know this is the greatest nation on earth. They want to contribute and they want to be part of our way of life. Now, if they reject our core beliefs, if they reject our focus on democracy, the rule of law, obeying the law, our basic freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, if they reject those things, the door must be shut.
Less Muslim immigrants, is that what that means? Who's disregarding our way of life?
Well, Andrew, we've seen a non-citizen in this country in recent times disregarding our way of life in an extraordinary and tragic way.
So it's just a hint at the very end there, maybe Muslims, or maybe not exactly.
That this is not about any particular race or religion.
So I'm sure you'll think, like I did, that didn't sound very convincing. And this morning came a bombshell, a leak to the News Corp papers and to Sky News' Cameron Redden of an immigration policy that Sussan Ley had drawn up before she was booted out, but hadn't released, big mistake by her, and hadn't even taken to her shadow cabinet. Now this draft policy recommends suspending immigration from regions controlled by one of 15 terrorist organisations, not necessarily whole countries, but certainly regions. Now, the policy says the proposed policy could result in up to 37 regions under the control of 15 listed terror organisations being designated, and goes on to list 13 countries, all majority Muslim countries, except for the Philippines and Cameroon, where Muslims are a significant minority, and the others are Afghanistan, Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Libya, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Palestine, Somalia, and Yemen. Now, you might note that not mentioned is any region in India where the Bondi gunman that Taylor mentioned at the end of that long answer actually came from. Now, Taylor didn't have much to do with drawing up this draft policy to restrict immigration from those 13 countries. His office told Sky News he hadn't gone through it line by line, he hasn't approved it. So, it seems to me that he's being issued a challenge by some in the Liberal Party. Conservatives, I presume. But is this really a fight that Taylor and his deputy Jane Hume really want? Because, you know, the heat would really be intense on them. You know, you're racist, the Liberals are anti-Muslim and the whole lot. And Taylor yesterday was already very eager to say he didn't have a problem with Islam.
We have many moderate, sensible Muslims who absolutely reject what happened at Bondi, and they want to be part of the Australian way of life.
But here is where the Liberals, and Labor in particular, by the way, Labor in particular, need to understand something that is troubling to say, and so troubling that few people dare say it. Yes, the majority of Muslims in this country are peaceful. But the difference between a moderate Muslim and an extremist is potentially much fuzzier than Labor or the Liberals say. And it's a difference that explains why the number of Muslims we let in does matter. Let's start with the fact that our Grand Mufti, Australia's highest ranking Muslim, cleric Dr. Ibrahim Abu Muhammad, also condemns the Bondi massacre as a crime against humanity, yet defended the even more brutal October 7 slaughter of 1,200 Israeli Jews. Just 1 week after that horror, he said the Palestinians fight for their lives and defend their land legitimately. In fact, he co-signed a fatwa last year by the International Union of Muslim Scholars saying people of Islam and all its countries, Muslim countries, not ours, had an obligation to wage jihad against the Zionist entity Israel and all those who participate with it on the occupied land. So he defends the slaughter of Jews there, denounces the slaughter of Jews here. What's the difference? Well, the biggest difference is that most Muslims don't consider Australia a Muslim country, or not yet. We are in what is called the House of War, where Muslims do not rule and are weak, and so come here under an implicit covenant to obey our laws. And to underline this point about how small and conditional is this difference between an extremist and a moderate Muslim, I'm going to end with two examples, two excerpts from a Q&A session that was posted by a most prominent Muslim moderate, Sheikh Shadi Al-Sulaiman, president of the Australian National Imams Council, posted some 13 years ago, who was asked by a follower this frightening question.
Can we take non-Muslim women in the West as slaves because they are sending troops to fight in Muslim countries?
Okay. Can we take non-Muslim women as slaves?
Now, a Christian preacher would respond, "Are you crazy? No one should enslave women ever. Not in Australia, not in the West, ever." But the Quran does not forbid it. So this was Sheikh Shadi's answer.
When you enter this country, you enter, let's say again, this is Dar Harb, let's say. It's Dar Harb, which means that it's a state of war. But you've entered this country under their agreement, which means you abide by it. Which means you're not allowed to kill anyone, touch anyone, or harm anyone. Leave the country and then come in as a fighter and then take them as slaves and that. Fight by yourself. Fight a nation of 20 million and let us see how far you're going to go. And this is does not make sense at all.
And to a final example, making clear that what you would consider extremist behaviour would not be considered extremist even by a moderate Muslim if the conditions were right, like if there were more of them. Sheikh Shadi was asked about jihad here, fighting to impose Sharia law.
And some people even claim that we should physically fight for it.
Brother, there is no doubt every single Muslim must believe in the implementation of the Sharia. Every single Muslim must believe in the implementation of the Sharia. But it's not about talking about implementing the Sharia. How are you going to implement it? You don't have power. You don't have strength. Talk about then, you want to implement in a Western country when you're at a state of strength and power. When more people embrace Islam, when you have more Muslims around you.
Numbers do matter. Numbers do matter. So what will Angus Taylor promise to do about it? Let us now see. Let us hope.